Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hi again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, one that is post covering finance and property news. It's another Monday evening, and of course, Edwin is back for another rant. Hi, Edwin. How you going?
Doing well, Martin. Doing well. Same old, same old, same old BS dished out by the politicians. Same old cold, wet weather Mondays and weekends. And I don't know how long this is going to go for, but I was really expecting a dry winter, but it seems to me like it's going to be another wet winter, and it could dampen the enthusiasm of people out there, both buying and selling, depending what the agents are going to be doing and what the buyers are going to be doing as well with relation to preparing themselves to make what is really the biggest financial decision in their lifetime, and gets scarier by the month.
Yeah, I've come to the conclusion that it's a big shell game. You know, one of these things where you are trying to find the pea, and they keep moving the shells around. I think that's what the politicians are doing, right? And I've come to the conclusion that they really don't want to fix much at all, right? What they want to do is just, sound as though they're doing things, but they don't really have any significant intention. I mean, look at the UK. We've just had the UK election, right? And the Labour Party got in with a, quote, landslide, except they got 1/3 of the votes for 2/3 of the seats. The overall turnout was below 60%, which is very low. And in fact, it was a vote against Sunak and the Conservatives who were in previously, rather than for anything. And we saw a similar thing in France. There's a big shell game going on, just trying to confuse everybody and essentially just trying to seek to deceive while they wheedle their way in and do whatever they want to do. It ain't right.
Well, it's all smoke and mirrors, as we keep on saying, and we have been saying for many years. It's all smoke and mirrors. What the policies, legislation, regulations, it's all just smoke and mirrors. There are more loopholes to get out of them. But look, think of yourself, consider yourself lucky, Martin. You don't have to go out and fight in the Eastern Front. And now that Rishi Sunak is gone, you're not going to be conscripted, Martin. Look, that's I don't know what the Labor Party are going to be doing, but my understanding is that you've just dodged the bullet, literally.
Well, yeah, it was meant to be mostly young people, I think. But one of the interesting things about the Labour Party is that they have committed to trying to set targets for home building in the UK, right? Significantly enhanced targets. But funnily enough, everybody's now saying, but hang on a moment, do we have the capacity to build? It's just like the debate in Australia, right? You can set a target, but have you got the people to actually do the building? And they're talking about changing some of the planning rules and trying to ease up on some of the green spaces and using some of the perhaps brown sites as well to try and actually increase home building. But I have to say, there's a lot of the same BS that we've seen in Australia, where effectively the political talk is cheap, but actions don't really necessarily follow, do they?
No, and this is the thing, right? So the solution. Let me guess. Let me just be a put my soothsaying hat on, and I'm going to predict that they're going to call in overseas migrants to build the new projects, Martin. They're going to bring in, and let me guess, what country will they come from? India. So it's really a race to see who's going to get the best of the lot. So are we going to get them? Are you guys going to get them? Do they really want to leave Canada? Because they're all in all stripes in Canada. But as you said, Martin, same old, announceables. More. What would you say? More committees, more departments, more grift, more brown paper bags, and more of everything else except what we really want. And this goes back to to the point when I say same old, where I posted that thing on X that there in where Trina James on the 11th or so of July 2023 was announced to be the new the first rental commissioner. But big words, big statements, big call, big this, the first of this, the first of that, and what do we have? As Cashman 111 put out an ex post as well. What we have is same old. We've got now balconies or sunrooms are being rented out as luxury bedrooms with views. With almost 360-degree views, glass views of the city at I think it was around $360 or $350 a week, which is so. What has been done? I know what has been done, but what hasn't been done is what you and I discuss on the Monday evening rants. But we always bring to light what has been done, and as I said, more committees, more departments, more wages, more money going out, more people on high incomes. I don't know what Trina is on, but good luck to her. I mean, she just hit the jackpot. But I keep on putting out on X Martin. Dusty still has a lot of franchises. Albo & Co Real Estate Group franchises. At rock bottom prices. Come and DM me for your next territory, and you could make a motto. Because you get a real estate license and you get a course in how to become a politician real quick. And we promise you get your license in 2 weeks. And you get your politician certificate in 1 weekend. Double whammy.
Yeah, well, it's clearly the way to go. There's some really interesting data out as well, which just contrasts so strongly with what is really going on from what perhaps people perceive to be going on. This was actually a chart that Tarek published, which just showed that the real house price growth versus real wages, you start back in 1997, and you can see this massive hike in real house prices relative to real wages, right? So that tells you something very significant. It's way more expensive than previously that it used to be able to buy property. We know that, and that's the data that really underpins it. And then this is another interesting one. This actually was based on some of the data that came out today from the ABS that Shane Oliver actually over at AMP put together, and just showed that we had this massive run up in both new home loans and home sales volumes back up in 2021. Then there was a drop, then there was a bit of a rise, and now it's easing again. But what's fascinating about that is if you look at the mix of finance, this is actually looking at the value, the owner occupiers, excluding first home buyers, the first home buyers and the investors. Well, it may not look too bad, but here is the real killer. If you actually look at the share of Australian housing finance commitments, excluding refinancing, you can see that owner occupiers are dropping, first home buyers are dropping, but guess who's on the rise? It's the investors, right? So it's the investors that are now very much driving the market. And I think that's quite significant because and I know that it's really, really tough for a lot of people to get into the market. But what we are seeing now is a massive fight in the cheaper property sector of the market in particular, with investors and first-time buyers fighting for those property. And the problem is that first-time buyers, because of the higher interest rates, have much less capacity to borrow relative to investors. So in fact, the scales are being tilted, the old finger on the scales, towards investors. And that's the true story of what's going on in the property market at the moment. But hey, you don't see that reported, do you?
No, you don't. And this is something that we've been talking about for years. And we said that this was the influences of these investment markets are the WeChat chatterers, the silent tigers, the new kids on the block, and obviously those that have had that have bought previously. There's the local contingency as well outside of, but they are blocks that that are driving this market, and pretty soon we're going to be having more institutional investors coming in hard as well with your build to rent scenarios and everything else that the government's going to throw at the construction industry in order to reach a sensible, well, what they may consider to be a sensible target. But HIA said that this year we're not going to see, we're not going to tip the 100,000 finished builds. And in fact, next year we may even see a lot less. So those targets are pretty much lost and gone. But the interesting thing, Martin, is what we've been discussing over the last few weeks has been how the government gives you a promise and announceable with the right hand, but what are they really doing with the left hand is a different kettle of fish in relation to the rental crisis, because obviously we've got the home ownership crisis with the first home buyers, which you and I said years ago that they were the lambs that got slaughtered. They were the ones that got thrown under a bus for votes. Policies that haven't worked for the last 2.5, 3 decades, but yet they continue to put them out because it buys them votes. Whether people still wish to listen to these policies, if anything, they're just bullets. They keep on firing at the first home buyers, and they don't realise how much the government's really attacking them by these so-called grants and other things that they dish out. But going back to the announceables, going back to giving with the right hand and attacking with your left, is really this whole thing. The discussion on the weekend around the rental crisis and what Channel 7 was reporting that with regards to the post that Cashman 111 put out on the weekend as well about the Channel 7 report about that balcony. The interesting thing, Martin, with that is what a lot of people don't see, right? So on the one hand, they acknowledge the fact that we're now in a rental crisis, right? Now, apart from the obvious of pulling the lever back on the current government immigration policy, you would think that they would implement other measures in order to protect and control rentals. Because the reason why investors are jumping into the market, in relation to your previous graphs that you put up, how strong the investors have come in and how those blocks of investors have literally driven the market northbound in the Sydney region because of what they can do with the properties. Now, one would think that the government would come in and step in and put stoppers in place to prevent people from going outside of what we would otherwise consider to be lawful, we would otherwise consider to be fair and equitable, in order to give your normal renter, your family that's wanting a long-term roof over their head, to have a fair chance of obtaining accommodation. Right? That would be that would be paradise. That would be considered as a government really looking after the people. But it's talk on one side, but yet on the other side, what we have and what I've just recently found out is absolutely left me flabbergasted, is the fact that NCAT are currently hearing matters, wait for it, matters of residential disputes that are brought up by your private landlords. There's nothing wrong with being a private landlord, not going through the real estate system, real estate agency system. Nothing wrong with that. But what caught my attention is, and talking to this tribunal member, is the fact that you've got private landlords that are renting their homes per room, and they're able to bring to the to NCAT matters of late payment, uh, uh, issues with damage to the rooms, and I was gobsmacked. I mean, I said to the tribunal member, I said, well, look, but if it's a private letting, right? Obviously, they need a residential tenancy to come under the Residential Tenancies Act. You need a lease. You need conditions under that lease. You need all the requirements, the regulatory requirements to fall under the Residential Tenancies Act. But the tribunal member said, well, they don't come under the Residential Tenancies Act. And I said, hold on a minute. So if they don't come under the Residential Tenancies Act, what do they come under? And before she could answer, I said, maybe they come under the short-term rental accommodation code of conduct, which is centered around your Airbnb and short-term accommodation letting. And they said, no, they don't come under that either. And I said, then what do they come under? What act do they come under? They don't come under anything other than common law. I mean, go figure. So I said, so therefore, what we would otherwise consider to be unlawful, having unlawful boarding homes, you're actually giving now a venue to have dispute resolution between landlord and tenant. And she said, yes. I said, I was absolutely gobsmacked, Martin. Absolutely gobsmacked, because, and wait for it, there's more, as they say. There's steak knives as well that go along with this scenario. And the steak knives are the disputes that come under this common law. As long as there is an agreement in place, it can be heard under NCAT, right? You could bring these matters, you could bring this dispute resolution under NCAT, and they even go as far as determining how many people can sleep in the bedroom. And if you have a guest sleepover, if they sleep in in this particular case, if the guest stayed for longer than 2 nights, then the tenant that was under this contractual obligation with the landlord, the landlord could charge the tenant an extra $20 per night for the room. But there's more. They can also have things in place as to curfews when they come in and out of the house, which is understandable, but also noise curfews as well. And you could even charge them for penalties for paying the rent late. In other words, on a daily rate. I don't know how you work that out, but as long as it's in a contract, as long as it's written in a piece of paper and both parties sign, it comes under contract law and common law. I said this is insane, because if I was the tribunal member and I was sitting at the tribunal and they brought a matter in I would ask for a residential tenant, a lease to come under the Residential Tenancies Act, or a lease under the for occupation under the short-term rental accommodation code of conduct. If there's nothing else, why am I hearing it? Why are you even here? Because outside of that, from the view of many property managers that I've spoken to, and also George from ITC, I mean, we're just dumbfounded as to the goings on. So on the one hand, they talk about the crisis, but now there's there's dispute resolution under NCAT. How does it make? Please, Martin, help me make sense, because I am absolutely flabbergasted.
Well, I can't make sense of the insensible, clearly, but presumably what it means is that those in multi-occupancy environments actually have less protections than normal tenants, right? That's the consequences of all this.
Yeah, they've got less protections. Then, needless to say, if you go as far as that, I would be of the opinion that the dwelling would have to more or less comply as properties have to comply in Queensland, where you've got a smoke alarm in every room. You've got to have other health and safety measures in place, and that has to be proven. So at first I thought that this individual that owned the property that brought this matter to NCAT, I thought that, as I said, I thought it was like a short-term accommodation scenario, and it was like an Airbnb dispute. But no, the owner of this property didn't live in the house, and 5 bedrooms in the house, and each bedroom had its own rental agreement. So what one would have to ask is what precautions are they taking in order to protect the tenant? Obviously, very, very little. Private lettings to an extent, unless you really know what you're doing. I mean, there are seasoned landlords that do rent out properties privately, but they comply with the legislation and the regulations under the Residential Tenancies Act. But this is another field. This is another trip. I mean, for a minute there, I thought the cigar that I was smoking got spiked or something, and but no, it was just pure tobacco. There was no funny business in there, and nobody spiked my drink either. So it was scary. It is scary, but this is what I say. This is where as we break these government policies or announceables down in the show, we get to see how they give it to us with the right hand and they take it away with the left hand, because what they say on the one hand, but when we break their policies, when we break what they're trying to put in place down, it comes back to, as I said earlier on, comes back to more departments, more think tanks, more money being paid to people that are in charge of these new departments, think tanks, and call yourself commissioner, call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, whatever title the government gives you. But it just means more money going out and less actually being done on face value by putting shovel to the ground and let's get building.
Yeah, well, the consequence of all of this is more and more people employed by the government, and less and less private enterprise able to do anything, and that really is not a good recipe. I just want to cycle back on one thing, that we discussed also the investors, and they were piling in, but there was this quite interesting story here where a particular investor actually decided to sell. The reason, because it was actually not working that well for them, and they had a whole host of first-time buyers piling in to try and buy this property. And this was headlined "Mortgage Cliff Success." Can you believe that? So it seems to me that you can always find a way to spin these things, right? To make a good story out of a bad story. But just to make it clear, there are property investors who are not buying, they are actually selling. The reason they're selling is that it's now pretty much impossible for those to be able to make the commercials on that property work, unless you go down the sort of route that we're talking about here, where effectively you're letting out each room separately and there's a separate agreement, and then you can generate 5 to 6 times the amount of income that you can normally, which is unfortunately what's happening more and more. But the consequences, of course, from a social perspective and from a lifestyle perspective are pretty significant. And just sort of going down that lifestyle, what's it really like on the front line? I think it's worth just dwelling on these stories. So there was a very significant story here about, in fact, it's getting harder to pay the bills. An increasing number of Queenslanders are struggling to pay their bills. The number of hardship cases are rising. The biggest stress comes from gas and electricity, where around 32,000 Queenslanders can't afford their bills and looking to take out financial assistance. So that's pretty bad. And then this one also came out, which was the other end of it, which was Shane Wright writing, saying that the Australia's working poor, including people holding down 2 or 3 jobs, are inundating financial counselling services as the combination of high mortgage interest rates and inflation leaves them struggling to make ends meet. The calls for the National Debt Helpline rose significantly. And I've been seeing this in my surveys and stress, of course, as well. And then on the other side, the spokesperson for Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers said, well, you've got the stage 3 tax cuts, the energy relief payment, et cetera, et cetera. We know people are doing it tough. The shadow treasurer said, families are in recession. We're seeing record business insolvencies and a record number of people working multiple jobs to make ends meet, which is exactly right. And then if you just want to sort of follow that forward, the rent crisis continues to bubble away. Okay, the rate of growth might be a little lower than previously, but it's still surging close to 10%. And every state in Australia has a shortfall of completed new homes. New dwelling approvals are a decade low. True, median rents may not tell you the true story, but clearly it's very, very difficult underneath. Now, all of those things are having profound consequences on what people are actually trying to do, because people are still aspiring, of course, to try and actually find somewhere to live. And I've been highlighting quite a few renters struggling to find a way into to buy. And in fact, tomorrow I'm going to have Veronica Morgan on. We're going to talk specifically about this conundrum of renters so desperate to find anything that they actually moved into buying. But this particular chart here, which is quite interesting, is underscoring it, right? So what are they doing? Well, in some cases, people are looking a lot further out. So they may be looking to, move out to find a long commute, but maybe values are a little lower, although it's worth saying that even there, prices are still rising quite high. The average commute in Australia is significantly higher now than in Europe, which is amazing compared with a few years ago. And then, of course, the other symptom is smaller and smaller and smaller blocks or lots. There was this article saying 250 square meters in Marsden Park. And I think, Edwin, your response to that was, hey, that's big.
That's huge. I mean, there's 230 square meter lots in Jordan Springs. But see, and that should be titled, not enough room to swing a bat. Should be titled, not enough room to swing a cricket. Pardon the pun. The thing, Martin, is this, right? You've got the scenarios they're going back to the commentary about distressed mortgage stress and how people are going. So unless we get a deluge of property on the market, we are not going to see this beast. We're not going to see this beast. The demand for property in the Sydney region, quench anytime soon. Again, I go back to the blocks that are influencing the market, and we've been talking about it for a while now, how these blocks of investors are influencing, and they are going to be moving hard and fast into properties, into regions in the Sydney region, into areas in the Sydney region further afield, where the first home buyers had a small percentage of getting into the market just to secure a principal place of residence, to put a roof over their young families' heads. And we said that the competition was going to be fierce, and it will continue to be fierce. I said last year that although last year you were seeing that there were calls for the regions were the outer regions of Sydney, the fringes of the Sydney region and further out were somewhat stagnant and were dropping in value. Even up to the Central Coast, they were dropping in value. Prices, properties were staying on market a lot longer. But what did I say back then, Martin? I said, watch this space as people realise, and as these investment groups move in harder and faster, and they've got a greater chance of obtaining property, and they can throw an extra $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 at a property in your Mount Druitt's, in your Rabies, in your fringes of the West, which may not be significant to some, but it is very significant, the extra 20, 30, 40, 50,000, because that's not what the bank is going to give them. As you said earlier on, the borrowing capacity is limited because they don't have the relationship with the banks. They don't have that ready cash. They don't have the borrowing capacity just simply dwindle away. Their buying power is buying them less. So it was always going to be that competition. And this is what we warned our followers and our viewers. And it's the mainstream media only just catching up to what we were saying a very long time ago that was going to happen. And it's happening. And the other thing that we said and we spoke about at length was that the commute time was going to people were going to have to make that sacrifice, and they were making that sacrifice earlier in the piece. And guess what? Your outer fringes of the Sydney region are going to have been going back up in value, and they'll continue to rise, and people will have to make that further sacrifice of travelling. Commuting a lot longer, and lo and behold, what has the state government done recently? They've increased the public transport fares as well, and the wages of the bureaucrats in order, so it's farcical, it's lawful, but again we go back to sensible, sensible actions that both sides of the fence don't really want to talk about, and that is the current immigration policy. And two, stop talking crap and start building, start doing something. Yeah, Minns has got, has put it to the LGAs. We're getting a change in your medium density. There's going to be, the proposals for the dual occupancies are going to start hitting. As we spoke last week, are going to start coming through. But at the end of the day, Martin, who's going to build them? Who's going to build? Whether it's medium density, whether it's high density, whether it's your dual occupancy, you can have all this planning in place. You can have land ready, willing, and able to be built on, but who's going to be built? Who's going to be building? Who's going to building, and secondly, how much confidence is the consumer going to have to buy some of these dwellings as well? So it's really a mixed bag. It's tread with caution moving forward, and those that are caught in the rental crisis, and a fortunate place to be in. But again, how long ago was it that we started warning our followers and our viewers to start securing not your 12-month leases, to start securing 24 and 36-month leases, and you can, and anything beyond 36 months under the guides and under the blessing of fair trading. You could even get a 5-year lease on a property, subject to making sure that everything, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed in relation to rental increases and the like. Now, I know a lot of our followers and our viewers that were looking for rental accommodation at that time followed our advice, and you could say they're sitting pretty. In comparison to everybody else, where the rents just skyrocketed since then, 20, 30, 40% higher than what they're paying. And guess what? Some of them are still enjoying, that I've been speaking to, are still enjoying another 12 in one case, and another another 18 months of cheaper rent, and the landlord can't do anything about it because it's a fixed term contract.
Yeah, in fact, I've had several emails from people who followed our advice over the last few months, and are now, as you say, much more protected than they were previously, which is, I think a very significant step. Of course, what happens at the end of that is an open question. But there is a broader question here, Edwin, with regard to the construction side, right? We're saying, they're not going to be able to build much more. The other point there is, and this is another article here, construction costs set to jump. And this is talking about the fact the building costs could well skyrocket by more than another 30% in some cities. The lack of productivity is driving prices up, which is, of course, about the quality of the construction industry and what they're able to build. Contractors and their supply chains are being selective in the projects they pursue. Material prices are less of an issue, although costs aren't going backwards. And of course, the insolvencies will continue to worsen over the next 18 months. So there's the chance of building more stuff is very close to zero. And all of those things we've been talking about for some time are now starting to work through. And, I remind everybody again that Tarek Brooker showed that we were actually constructing at a significantly higher rate than many other countries, despite the fact that we're not meeting the targets that everyone's talking about, and the 1.2 million is a pipe dream. And yet, the thing I find fascinating is how in the media, the stories about, hey, look at how much prices have gone up. Home prices rise more than a CEO's pay, which was one article, and all celebrating all of this, and property increases by up to $880 a day, which is way more than people are actually earning. I mean, that's a side consequence of massive amounts of bad policy over many, many years. But it all goes back to that first chart that I shared that showed that real incomes have grown much less than real house prices over the last 20 to 30 years because of bad policy. And and I know that none of the things that are being talked about at the moment are going to change this. So the chances of actually seeing prices fall significantly, unless one, we get a recession, or two, we get significantly higher interest rates, is pretty low. And we also know, of course, that politicians and regulators are really worried about financial stability, which would be a real issue if prices start to fall. So guess what? The chances are we're going to continue to see these prices hanging around very high levels and just putting a lot more pressure on a lot of households. And like we said, it's a shell game.
Yeah, it's a shell game, and it's all smoke, all smoke and mirrors, all smoke and mirrors. But what they don't talk about in these reports, I mean, I would say that there are some apartment sites that have gone up in value significantly in certain parts of the of the Sydney region and other regions. But there are also a lot of apartments that have gone backwards. So you really got to be define the type of property that you're going to be buying, both as a principal place of residence and or as an investment. They don't talk about that. It's all thrown into one pile, and to give you that story, that clickbait type of stories. But I think our viewers and our followers are a lot wiser, and they understand that you really got to break down markets, and you got to break down the types of properties and what you're buying. Whether high rise, low rise, what type of title, strata title, torrents title, company title, community title, and the work. It all plays a part. But obviously, quick, easy reports. Not to distinguish different markets and how many are suffering. Although you've got these stories, but there's also other stories, as we brought out in the show, where people have gone backwards with the decisions, and in as I said, in what region. Put yourself in Melbourne's shoes, and it's a different kettle of fish. Whether it be a freestanding house, or whether it be a medium density development, or whether it be a high rise development, there's a lot more pain going on. Why? Obviously, because everybody wants to get out of Melbourne to an extent, but it's also because of the amount of property that's on the market. When you talk about the numbers, which we'll reflect on later on in the show, and you see how much more properties are on market in Melbourne than same time last year. But it's so you sort of have to read those stories with a glass of tequila on one side, so you can just sort of palate them at times. We like to get into the nuts and bolts of things, but that's what it is. But the unfortunate thing, Martin, for Sydney, as to the what we alluded to earlier on with the blocks, the investment blocks, and the push the investors have. The unfortunate thing is that the chatterers are still out there, and they're still talking about the future growth in the property market in the Sydney region, and what to look out for and what to do based on the new policy around travel between Sydney and China.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting. And we might put the little extract up here. It's in Chinese, of course, Edwin, so we can't necessarily read it directly. But it is interesting that this new, it's a ticket, isn't it? It's a 15-day visa-free offer. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, look, Chinese is great, Martin.
I can read your notes.
Was that? Oh, okay. I thought for a minute there you just you've been learning Chinese through AI. Yeah, well, look, it's 15-day visa. It's you literally jump on a plane, go to the just make sure you have your passport with you. Jump on a plane and fly to to any city in China. But the interesting thing is what the WeChat chatterers have to say about this and how they're interpreting this whole thing. Now, they're only waiting for the reciprocal arrangement the invitation by the Australian government to Chinese tourists, and that's it. It'll be more paying for the for first-time buyers and people wanting to get into the Aussie property market. Your first-time buyers, more to the point. So it's really you can travel freely, but as we've been alluding to, and we're talking about the ramifications of these free travel to China without a visa for 15 days, providing you buy a ticket that has a return date, on or before 15 days. You can literally travel to China. But look, the cynical side, or the side that the WeChat chatters talk about this, is really, as we've been talking and alluding to, is why now? Why under the issues that China is going through with their property market, with their investment portfolios, with their economy, and obviously the powers to be there, those that influence the governments there, those that are in charge of the governments there, the top wigs, want to take the money out of China. This is an easy way. So it's not only to have the advantages of, for the locals from here to enjoy good food or travel over to China as travel becomes cheaper and cheaper, as more are able to jump on the planes, and there'll be more planes heading to China as well. As they say, it's not just to enjoy good food, medical options, with family members that they have there, and that they can get attended for any medical issues a lot quicker than our current health system, where you have to wait months, if not years. Dental, and also do a bit of shopping over the weekend and spend a couple of days there and then fly back. But what they're saying in all this is, think of the amount of cash that is now going to be coming out of China. And if you travel with your family, they're talking about, it depends how many in your family group. You can literally each come back with a pocket full of yuan, and convert it back into Aussie dollars, and do those trips as many as you want, and in economies of scale. Sooner than later, you're going to have a really nice sizable deposit to buy a property. That's what they're looking at. That is why we share what we share. It's not necessarily what's on face value, but it's how the chatterers are interpreting what many will be doing. Let's not forget that some of these chatterers are just, there's no filter in a lot of these discussions. There's really no filter, but it's great insight, and it's a warning to our viewers and to our followers as to what they're thinking, what the logic is, and why they're jumping into the market, amongst other things.
Yeah, and even the New York Times, as just following on down this trend and track a little bit, are basically saying, well, could be interesting. More are coming.
Yes, look, it's the New York Times are putting Australia as the third most sought after destination destination. Australia comes third, and New Zealand comes third. So when you sort of got these sort of reports, articles, and they're being shared around the WeChat groups and the investor groups, and the pushing these the reasons why. The property investors. Remember this. It was almost a year ago where we shared. I think it was about a year ago, where we shared what the Chinese philosophy is in terms of investing in property. And it was, remember, the groups that got formed at that time where they were really racing to buy one investment property each year over the next 5 years. Now, and if you didn't make it into those WeChat groups, you got kicked down to the lower groups where it was 3 investment properties over 5 years. And then if you didn't make it there, is buy your first investment property over the next over the next 5 years. But and these groups are prolific because they've got no appetite to open up any more, restaurants, retail outlets, hospitality, cafes, or that. I mean, you see them around, but the people that they're predominantly in these investment groups, and there's quite a number of them, and there's sizable groups up to 500 in some of them. That's the maximum you can have on a WeChat group, but they're very, very active, and that is why I say this is why we follow them. And this is why we pay very close attention to how they move and how they're moving their money and what they're doing with the money and where they're parking the money. These are second, third generation Aussie Chinese that are involved in these groups, and they've seen what the mum and dad have done, how they've sacrificed themselves for years running a takeaway shop or a retail shop or whatever other, and they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it because they've gained high-ranking posts in different corporations, and they're pretty much in the white-collar workers and executives, and they've got a lot more money to throw around, and they've also got money that they've inherited from grandma and grandpa and everybody else, and the whole approach to property is different to how the Western society will look at investing in property in most cases, and this is why many haven't been able to obtain anything. And obviously, when you've got low supply, a huge demand built up by all these different things that the governments are allowed, the different governments have allowed to do under their mandates, or to get brownie points with the voting blocks. It's really put. This is why we've got the rental pressure and the ownership pressure on the local Aussies.
Absolutely, and it's not going to change anytime soon, isn't it? Demand is still very strong. There's still a lot of cash potentially coming into Australia, and the channels are there for those who know how to do it, which essentially means significant demand, and locals are going to be relatively disadvantaged. I think it's quite interesting, Edwin, actually, if you stand back slightly and look at it from a construction perspective, there's another trend which is just worth talking about briefly, right? We talked about the fact that the demand for building new stuff was going up. We talked about the cost pressures in terms of materials. So reflect on this. Why is it that people like Boral and CSR and a few others too, which are publicly listed companies, maybe thinking about going private? Now, why would they be going private at this stage?
Well, this is the $64,000 question. In fact, they've gone private. You've got Adbury, Adelaide, Brighton, construction material, industrial manufacturing of materials. You got CSR and Boral. They're at the lowest point in the stock value, from my understanding, my brief understanding. Again, this is an extension of what the WeChat chatters are talking about as well. It's not new news, but it's how they interpret what's going on and what they believe is happening. Where again the Western mind has, perhaps we've missed the obvious in this, and so you've got Boral, which will publicly listed companies, CSR and Adbury. Now they're all privately owned, privately acquired. And the funny thing is what they're saying is, well, what does it all mean? Obviously, the obvious is if you're a publicly listed company, there's a lot more scrutiny as to how much debt you can carry. There's a lot more scrutiny over what you can borrow in order to stay ahead of the curve, in order to fulfill your obligations or keep the production going. But when it's privately owned, well, you're no longer under any scrutiny. But I started to think as to when they started talking about those points, and then I got Dusty to make commentary on what about the other side of that coin. And the other side of that coin is, as a publicly listed company, Martin, and this would interest you a lot. As a publicly listed company, obviously there's going to be a lot of scrutiny as to how the products are either manufactured or what components go into the product to be manufactured to be used in the construction industry, correct? But as a private company, guess what? You don't have as much scrutiny, and you can bring in literally shit to build the Pavlova high-rise developments that we're going to be building. So the WeChat chatterers, Dusty put that to the WeChat chatterers, and that sent off another little discussion, which I was very proud of. And and the interesting thing is of course that is what we could see, and many in the chat would agree that is going to happen. We're basically these new privately owned companies, production is going to pretty much not going to happen here in Australia. They're going to be more warehousing companies than producers. So less jobs available in the production, in the manufacturing. Okay, you could say there's going to be more warehousing opportunities, but that could be done with more machinery and robots, because we're going to be importing a lot of second tier materials. Less scrutiny over what the composition of the building products are going to contain in terms of toxic, being toxic or being how it's going to be treated. And guess what? They're also going to be importing them a lot cheaper. But the question that I raised also was, how many would believe that the products are going to be cheaper to import, right? To the new owners of these companies, they're not necessarily going to sell them cheaper than what they currently are, although they were going to be of a lower grade, are they? That was my opinion. And again, that sent the chattering, because when you think about it, when they're going to be selling these imported materials under the Boral brand, under the CSR brand, under the Adbury brand, and good brands, particularly your CSR products, your Gyprock, your wall linings, and the like. So because it's got the name's going to sell it, but except many for a while they're going to be getting second-rate materials but paying premium for the goods. And this is again where the new construction is going to fail in many ways, and it's only going to be a matter of time before that could be 5-10 years before the mainstream pick up on the materials, on the how bad of quality materials and the toxic levels within the materials that are going to be imported. So this is something that the mainstream aren't talking about. This is something that the governments haven't thought about. This is something that where the government support should have been stronger in maintaining these companies. In my opinion, this is my personal opinion, keeping them in-house, keeping them public, making it more cost effective for the local builders to use. So we're basically going to be inundated by that material once again, Martin. We've just gone backwards. We've really just gone backwards, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, we don't manufacture much at all in Australia now, and of course the energy costs are very expensive. But the quality of the materials coming in are suspect. We also know that some of those boards still maintain some asbestos within them, although nobody wants to talk about that either. So this is a really important issue, and once again, I guess you've got to come to the ultimate conclusion, though, that there are people who believe that the demand for materials and therefore the market is going to remain strong, and therefore they're pretty bullish on the future. And if you've got 1.2 million homes aspirationally being built, you've got huge pressure on the cost of materials. Well, this all makes sense, but unfortunately, what's going to end up with people paying more, a lot of the value flowing away from where you might want to see it flow, and into the pockets of some rather large private investors.
Yeah, and this is the whole thing, right? This is the whole thing where you find out that you're paying top dollar. You're paying top dollar for goods that are being manufactured under inhumane conditions. No different to your Louis Vuittons and your Gucci bags, and they're paying $2.50 or $2.50 per hour to exploited labor, and then selling those bags into the Western markets for $2,500–3,500. This is and it takes up to my understanding is it takes 6 to 10 hours to put one of these bags together. Do the math. This obviously it's not going to be in such enormous scale for the materials that we're going to be importing. But my concern is, so be it with the cost. That's just the price that we have to pay for the stupidity and the ignorance of our leaders. But my concern is the toxic component, the levels that are going to be within these products, like your wall linings, paints, even whether it be concrete blocks, whatever you think about it, electrical wiring and insulation, timber. What are we going to find out? 5 years, 10 years down the track, what ailments the tradespeople are going to be suffering because of that policies.
Yeah, good question, Edwin. Don't know the answer, but I suspect it won't be a good one. Let's just now quickly look at the old numbers, because interestingly, if you look at Sydney, first of all, this is from Domain, 16,706 on the 1st of July were the properties listed for sale, and 16,304 a week later. So there was a little bit of a fall. And interesting observation from your chart here, showing that, what's going to happen now? Interesting question.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting as we like to look at the numbers, 3-4 weeks in advance as to how they're going to track. They're starting to drop to meet the 2023 numbers on market. But let's not forget the demand is, in some parts has doubled, if not tripled. Hence the price surges in around freestanding homes in certain markets of the Sydney region. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next 4 weeks of put on there on Dusty Sydney region for sale listing numbers chart. What the next 4 weeks look like in 2023, and it's going to be interesting because now we're starting to see the current numbers because of the winter season are starting to drop. How much of a drop we're going to experience, don't know. The chatter amongst the real estate agents and agencies that I talk to on a regular basis to get some idea what the market is doing on a week by week basis. The common thread is that they've been called out to less market appraisals, and they're currently noticing in some markets they're starting to notice less not in all, but in some markets, they're starting to see significant less listings than what they saw in same time in 2023. So it's just let's follow the charts and let's see how that compares on a week by week basis over the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, we're very interesting to see. And I've also picked up from some of my one-to-one conversations and surveys that there's a bit of a reluctance now to think about listing, partly because it's difficult to find an alternative if you want to move somewhere else, and partly because some of the peak values that were being hit in some areas are now coming back. Not universally, but I think it'll be interesting to see what happens to prices in the next little while as well. Let's go down to Melbourne and have a quick look down in Melbourne. So on the 1st of July, there were 27,112 properties. Again, houses more than 13,700, and apartments were there too, but not so significantly. Quite a lot of land, more than 4,000 lots there. And looking forward, the numbers were 27,046 with somewhat in the trend. So we are seeing a slight easing, but I think, Edwin, my perspective would be that the Melbourne story still is more about people looking to bail than in the Sydney region.
100%. And you look at the number of houses, freestanding houses on the market and land, people just don't want to build. And they're getting out of those off the plan home and land packages that got sold in the fringes of the Melbourne region as well. As we said earlier on in the 2023, same time 2023, we had just over 20,000 listings on market, and currently we've got 27,000 listings on market, and most of them are made up of freestanding homes. Again, there's certainly distinctions in what in contrast to what's happening in the Sydney market, but yeah, it's there's no doubt there'll be the government and its policies they have had a major impact on investors bailing out. The minimum standard regulations that got brought in a year ago, that they've obviously had an impact on investors that aren't cashed up and the properties weren't producing or keeping up with the interest repayments, let alone with hefty price tags of replacing the glazing, the windows, with replacing insulation, heating and cooling, and the mandates around new induction cooktops and doing away with gas cooktops and the whole bit. So it's been a costly experience, and how that's going to translate to Queensland is going to be a watch this space as well. Are we going to see more listings on market because the minimum standards obviously were put in place in Melbourne first. Queensland followed suit within 8 or so months later. We still haven't moved into that arena as yet, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Queensland as the policies bite, and how they're going to affect investors, and whether they're going to see the same. I'm going to put my money on we're going to see the same that we saw in Melbourne, because there's less appetite in the Brisbane region for your budget accommodation scenarios than what we see in Sydney. That's just my call. So I'm predicting whether it be in 6 months' time when the minimum standards policy starts to bite, and depending on how hard the government there push, the changes will determine. And if they go on par with what's happened in Melbourne, I'd say we're going to see a rise in investment properties on the market in Brisbane, and a lot of the investment properties there in the Brisbane region, Martin, they're particularly on your strata developments, in your townhouse developments and small density developments, they're old. And they're coming up to their use-by date, and the materials that they use to build a lot of these townhouses and a lot of these strata complexes weren't and aren't as robust as what they were and they are here in New South Wales, because of the nature of the not only the landscape but the nature of the climate as well. So so I know a number of investors that are opting to bail out because the townhouses that they own, they're as I said, they're coming to the use by date. They were built in the early 80s, and they're starting to pick up a lot of repair bills.
Absolutely. Well, let's just look quickly at the numbers in Queensland. So on the 1st of July, 3,617, and a week later, 3,639. So small moves. But I'll be interested to see how Queensland shakes out over the next little while as some of those regs come in. And briefly, we'll just look at the auctions. So as you'd expect, this time of year, it's slow, isn't it? And that's pretty normal.
Yeah, and not only that, we also got the school holidays. So the cold weather, rainy, cold weather, school holidays. So they're going to impact the that trend in the Sydney region. I just find it interesting how we've almost dropped to half of the amount of listings sale by auction. I think the people that want to get out are finding that are getting out by a quick bailout at an auction marketing strategy in Melbourne isn't really meeting the required amount of money that they need to get out. So it's how we went from almost 1,200 auction listings. Yeah, it's winter. Yes, it's school holidays, but it's just a huge drop from your 1,200 to your 600s. I mean, Sydney was steady at 700 and just over 700, close to 800. We've only just dropped to mid fives. Yeah, so it's an interesting point, not one that determines or defines, in my opinion, the real market and what's going on. But it's just an interesting point to bring to the attention of our followers and viewers.
Absolutely. Well, now we'll just quickly touch on the rentals. So in Sydney, 12,794 on the 1st of July, 13,065 a week later, so a small rise. And in Melbourne on the 1st, 10,520 a week later, 10,671. So small rises in the number of properties that are actually on list. And Edwin, I guess my perspective on this would be that there might be a small rise, but of course it doesn't make things more affordable. And as we reported earlier on, the rentals are still rising for a lot of people. So there's still huge pressure, and the overall supply and vacancy rates are still very low at the moment. So it's not really moving the needle.
No, and this is the sad part about it. I wish we had figures on how many people don't have a lease and are in between, are in sleeping in garages, in makeshift granny flats in garages or friends garages and caravans and like that's unless we go out there and knock on doors and talk to individuals. I don't know whether there's a Facebook page. Maybe our followers can DM me if there is. I'm not on Facebook, but I'll go back on Facebook just to see and understand. But I can't but think that there's a lot more pain out there than what even you and I share on the Monday evening rants. And the other scary thing for me, or for the future of our children, the future generations, is the decay in society and what does it all mean? How desperate are people going to get, and what are they going to do in the desperation to get accommodation or to have some sort of security of sorts for the young ones. I mean, it's the decay of society is only getting worse.
Yeah, I agree, Edwin. It's not very positive, unfortunately, in that respect. And with social unrest perhaps bubbling below the surface, and people finding it very hard to make ends meet. So crime might be rising. It's not looking good. And just as we come to the end of the show, you've got a very important observation here, specifically in the Melbourne context with regards to reaching those property management standards, which of course are now front and center for many people. What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, look, like everything else that we've been sharing on the show about being prepared and being ahead of the curve and just preparing themselves, with long-term leases and everything else. Obviously, the other side of that equation is the landlords. Over the years of my involvement in the real estate industry and running rent roll for over 18 years. There are long-term clients that I've kept in touch, and also those that have follow us on the show. Now, a number of them have also got extensions of their investment portfolios in Melbourne. They've been hit hard. The ones that have reached out and they've been asking questions around when I believe that the minimum standards is going to hit New South Wales. But based on what's happened in Melbourne and their experience in Melbourne, they've also asked what are the critical things that are going to be looked at, and do I believe they're going to be as drastic as what they are in Melbourne with regards to glazing, insulation, electrical, and all those issues that are very, very costly. So I've been saying to them, three in particular, I've been saying to them, look, this is, whether they bring them all in or whether they don't, let's look at the safety aspect of, these are around freestanding homes. One of them's in a strata complex, and I've asked her to talk to the strata manager in relation to the glazing. They're old windows, the apartment block that was built in the early 70s. Around safety, it's not safety glass. You're not getting much insulation out of 3mm glass. Even if the regulations come in 6 months' time or even in 12 months' time before, why not get these things organised now and fixed up now? And you're going to do two things: increase the value of the property. You're going to also give the tenant a better place to live in, and they're going to look after your property a lot better. Yes, on the other side also means that under a new lease, you could ask for a little bit more in rent as well. But if you can afford it, why not implement these changes early rather than later, when everybody, like in Melbourne, is paying in some cases almost double what they would have been paying if they got they prepared early and they started fixing the properties up earlier before the mad rush to get things done. It just makes sense, to prepare early and be ahead and get things done. There are more positives than negatives, and as I said to all of them, you're also giving your tenant a better place to be accommodated, and I'm sure they'll be a lot more grateful and look after the property a lot more and a lot better than out of gratitude.
I agree, Edwin. Sometimes tackling things early rather than later, particularly when there's a chance that prices will hike later as well, makes a lot of sense. If you're aware and some of those issues are coming, then strike while the iron's hot. Edwin, I want to say thank you very much. Another very important conversation again this week. Always so much to talk about, and we'll do it all again next week, which will feel like tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, and I hope to see you there still next week, Martin. I hope that you haven't been conscripted and sent to the Eastern Front.
Yeah, well, hopefully I should be here. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon. And cheers to all our viewers. Take care.